So Black Panther is officially a Best Picture nominated movie at the Oscars, whether you think it deserves it or not. But there is one thing that is a fact, and that's that it crushed it at the box office. And so did a lot of the other Oscar nominated movies this week. Turns out that The Favorite is up 215% from previous weeks, Green Book's up over 150%, A Star is Born is up over 100%, and even Bohemian Rhapsody is up nearly 10% at the theaters. That's pretty incredible. But not every other movie has done so well this week, so let's talk numbers. Welcome to Hritsko Reviews. My name's Josiah, and my channel is all about movies and box office predictions. On this week's box office prediction show, I'm talking not only about how bad my predictions were, but how bad all of these new movies did at the box office. So let's get right into this week's actual numbers. The new movies this week were Serenity and The Kid Who Would Be King, which both did not do that well. One of them cracked the top 5, and the other didn't. So these top 5, first in 5th place is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's back in the top 5. It's in its spot. It made $6.15 million. That was about an 18% drop. So it's continuing to do well on its box office run in its 7th week, which is pretty nice. At this spot, I predicted Aquaman was going to be number 5, and we'll see how these numbers change around based on these new movies and how bad they actually did at the box office. So then in number 4 this week was The Kid Who Would Be King with $7.15 million. Now this is a big upset for this movie. It's not quite a bomb yet. I mean, it very well could be though. I mean, it has a projected or a budget of around $53 million, and it only made $7 million in its opening weekend. Those are not great numbers. Now, it did do okay worldwide, nothing really phenomenal. It has about $10 million overall. This movie may end up losing a lot of money, and I thought it would do okay. I mean, it's a kids movie in January. There's not a lot else out there for them to see. I mean, I guess Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, Aquaman. So maybe there is some little bit of competition, but I thought it'd do a little bit better this week than what I predicted. And third up is Aquaman. It's continuing its run, crushing it. It's making waves in its 6th week, and this movie this week made $7.35 million. That's about a 30 or actually 27% drop, which is significantly better than what Wonder Woman was doing at this point. No, I shouldn't say significantly, but it is better than what Wonder Woman was doing at its 6th week at the box office. And this is actually where I thought Serenity would land, and it did not. So at number 2 is The Upside. The Upside made $12.24 million. That's about an 18% drop from the previous week. I actually predicted this movie would do around $11 million, so I was close to it, but again, it beat my projections. So this movie's doing very well with Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart. I actually haven't been out to the theater to see this, so let me know what you guys thought about it if you checked it out at the theater. And the number 1 movie of this week is still Glass. Yes, Glass is still number 1 at the box office for the week of January 25th through the 27th. This movie did $19 million, which is about a 52% drop. Now, this is worse than Split did as far as its drop was, and it's still not doing quite as well as Split did at the box office in January of 2017. So this movie, I thought it would do a little bit better, around $26 million. And as you may remember from my video last week, I thought the weather played a big part in people not going out to see Glass. And I heard you guys sounded off a little bit in the comments about, you know, people not being able to go see this movie, and I thought it would do maybe a bit better than the previous week, but I was wrong. I thought it would do $26 million. I was off. It only did about $19 million. And so as you see in this top 5, there's no Serenity. So Serenity is the new Anne Hathaway and Matthew McConaughey movie, and it is a box office bomb. This movie made $4 million, $4.8 million at the box office this week. that's not very good for an opening weekend with these actors and actresses. This is Anne Hathaway's worst box office opening. This just, I don't know if it wasn't marketed well, or just, the filmmakers just didn't have that great of expectations for this movie. I mean, it has like a D cinema score right now, so I don't see this doing very well. And one interesting thing to note is that in sixth place was actually Green Book. And as I mentioned, this was up 150% this week, which is pretty incredible. This is probably based on the fact that all the Oscar nominations were just released this past week. And Green Book's been getting some good word of mouth. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we get into the predictions for February 1st through the 3rd. So for the 1st through the 3rd, there really aren't any new big movies coming out. There are a couple smaller ones, but honestly, I don't even feel like they're worth mentioning because I don't think that they're going to crack the top 5 at all. And unfortunately, I think this is actually going to be one of the worst weeks at the box office in 2019 so far. There aren't any big movies coming out. Some of the movies they're long or they're along the way in their run a little while, and there are actually some more storms coming. So I just don't see this weekend being very big at the box office. And don't get too bored with my predictions because it's going to be a lot of the same movies that you've heard over the past couple weeks. Besides my number 5 prediction, which is actually Green Book. And as I said, this movie cracked, it was the number 6 of last week, actual. And I think this can still do well. It's getting really good word of mouth. It opened in over 1,000 new theaters last week. So what that means is that they're going to be those people that saw the movie based on the Oscars. They see how great this movie is. I mean, this is probably one of my favorite movies of last year. I give it a 10 out of 10. I loved it so much. It's a phenomenal movie. And I see this word of mouth really carrying it a little bit. Now, I'm not going crazy with my prediction. I think it's only going to make around $4 million. But in this week, that's enough to crack the top 5. And that's even with a 30% drop. And it's in its 12th week, actually, at the box office, which is pretty good for a movie to crack the top 5 then. And number 4, I have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, this movie, it's been doing very well. Had about an 18% drop last week. This week, I'm going to project around 35% drop, just because I don't think a lot of people are going out to the theaters this week. This movie, I project around $4.5 million at the box office in its 8th week. And it does still have some Oscar buzz, which is pretty nice now that it's nominated for Best Animated Film. So I think this will continue to do well. And another superhero movie that's going to continue to do well is Aquaman. It's continuing to outperform Wonder Woman and other DC movies, crushing it worldwide, beating a lot of records at the box office domestically. So I project this movie will make around $5 million this weekend. So as you see, the 3, 4, and 5, none of them crack $10 million. They're all around that $5 million range, which is pretty low for a top 5 at the box office. And at number 2, this movie still doesn't crack the $10 million. It's The Upside. So this movie, it's doing well. Beating a lot of, it's outperforming. I mean, the nice thing about a lot of these movies is they're outperforming expectations, or at least my expectations at the very least, and some of the studio expectations. So this movie will probably drop around 30% to put it at $8.5 million in its 4th week run. And at number 1 still is going to be Glass, around $11 million this week with a 40% drop. So Split had around a 45% drop in its 3rd week. And as I said, this is doing a little bit worse than Split. I think it'll still do okay this week and, be the number 1 movie of the week. But that's where I am. So as we go through this list again, at number 5, Green Book. 4 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Number 3 is Aquaman. 2 is Kevin Hart's The Upside. And number 1 is M. Night Shyamalan's Glass. So I want to know, what are your guys' predictions for this upcoming week? And what do you think about mine? Are you upset at me because I got the predictions so wrong this week? I didn't see Serenity and The Kid Who Would Be King doing that poorly at the box office, but I think this week's a little bit easier to project. And as always, make sure you join me every week for the box office prediction show, where I talk about the newest and latest box office predictions every single week. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.